Well, good evening, and welcome to a discussion on personalized medicine. I'm Mark Moran. I'm KJZZ's Associate General Manager for News and Editorial Strategy. Quickly, I'd like to recognize a few of the key station personnel. Ralph Hogan's our Associate General Manager for Engineering. Bill Shedd is our Associate General Manager for Programming and Operations. Louis Stanley is Associate General Manager for Development and also the President of Friends of Public Radio for Arizona. This event's being produced by KJZZ, the Arizona SciTech Festival, and Rio Salado College. I'd like to thank all three organizations for their hard work. I'd also like to thank Maricopa College's television for recording and broadcasting this event, and of course, my thanks to all of you for joining us here tonight. If you haven't done so, please silence your cell phones, turn them off, whatever you need to do to make them not go off during the middle of the presentation. There will be a break tonight during the portion of the program at about 7:45. And there'll be a Q&A with the folks on my left. First, I'll have a chance to ask them some questions, and then after the break, the floor will be open to you. We're here to learn more about personalized medicine. In addition to holding promise for healthcare breakthroughs, it could also be a huge economic boon to cities willing to invest the necessary money, effort, and time. A medical treatment designed uniquely for you may sound like science fiction, but in fact it is possible. Our aim tonight is to walk away with a better understanding of what personalized medicine is and how it could potentially affect your life. A couple of key introductions tonight. First, I'd like to recognize the General Manager of KJZZ, K-Bach, and the Sun Sounds of Arizona. Our General Manager and fearless leader, Dr. Jim Paluzzi, is here. Now I'd like to introduce the President of Rio Salado College, Dr. Chris Bustamante. In addition to... Oh, it's okay. More applause is fine. In addition to serving as the leader of our fine institution, Dr. Bustamante has a rich background in public service and higher education. He has served on the Leadership Fellows Program of the National Community College Hispanic Council and was appointed by Governor Jane Hull to chair Arizona's Merit Award System Board. He also currently serves as an honorary commander at Luke Air Force Base. Dr. Bustamante, thank you for hosting us tonight, and please help me welcome Dr. Chris Bustamante.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's forum. On behalf of Rio Salado College, the Maricopa Community College District, and the Valley's NPR affiliate radio station, KJazz, we're excited about this evening's festivities. I don't know if you all know or not that KJazz is hosted by Rio Salado College, and the license is owned by the Maricopa Community College District, so we're very much interested in supporting these types of community forums. It's also an honor to partner with the Arizona SciTech Festival. Forum topics such as personalized medicine are important to our Arizona residents and help to foster innovations in science and technology statewide. I'd like to welcome our panelists generally this evening. I know that Mark is going to introduce them more in depth here in a few moments. And I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce a few community leaders who are with us tonight, including Dr. Jeremy Babinger, who is the director of the SciTech Festival. And wave and let everybody know who you are. Thank you. Dr. Laura Martin, who is Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Arizona Science Center, and also a Friends of Public Radio board member. Welcome. Also Carol Flores, who's project manager with the Arizona Science Center as well. And I want to introduce my boss, the Chancellor of the Maricopa Community College District, Dr. Rufus Glasper. We have a member of the Maricopa Community College District Governing Board, Mr. Dana Saar, who is our board secretary. Welcome. And thanks again to each of you for joining us. We look forward to the discussion and especially hearing your questions and your comments. As educators, we value the innovation that fuels advances in science and technology. The Maricopa Community College District is one of the largest higher education systems in the country, serving well over 260,000 students each year in 10 community colleges and 2 skill centers here in the Valley. It's also the largest single provider of workforce training in Arizona. Higher education plays an integral role in preparing the next generation of science and technology innovators. Tonight's discussion is timely as we work with business and industry leaders to foster growth and economic development throughout Arizona. And also, what we want to do and work hard to do is to create viable career opportunities and quality health care for all. The future of Arizona calls us to innovate locally, to compete globally, and tonight we want to continue that discussion. So again, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us this evening. Mark?
Thank you, Dr. Bustamante. Well, let's take a few minutes to, well, I want to give you a reminder first. When you walked in at your table, you see something that's kind of like a little index card that says Public Insight Network. This is a project that KJZZ is involved in. We'd like for you to become part of our network of sources, to share your expertise, your opinions, and experience with our journalists at KJZZ. If you'd take just a minute, take the pen there, fill out the card, and give it to our producer, Nick Blumberg, who is in the back of the room there. And Nick is our pin journalist at the station, who's working hard to do a lot of community outreach within not just Phoenix, but Arizona in general. So on to our panelists. Dr. Michael Demeure is the director of the Rare Tumors Program at the Translational Genomics Institute, or TGen, here in the Valley, here in Phoenix. He's the scientific director of TGen's Center for Pancreatic and Endocrine Surgery. Dr. Demeure also oversees a program that researches the role of genetics in pancreatic cancer. Dr. Demeure, welcome. Thank you for being here. Dr. Darin Taverna is a researcher and also in the Integrated Cancer Genomics Division at TGen. Dr. Taverna's work to find various variations in human DNA is essential, and these variations are associated with disease. His research has included prostate, breast, and colon cancer. Dr. Taverna, thank you for being here. Barry Broome is the president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Mr. Broome has been credited with helping to change public policy related to economic development and helping to make Arizona attractive to new employers. During his tenure, he's also helped bring about 30,000 jobs to Greater Phoenix. Mr. Broome, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Taverna, let's start with you. To the untrained ear, we hear the words personalized medicine. Can you define what personalized medicine is?
Well, it's basically about getting the right treatment to the right person using information about that person, like specific information about that person. Genomic information helps, and also their history as well. So it's really, using prior knowledge, as much prior knowledge as you can about this person, and apply it to a medical diagnosis.
How does that work effectively? When you walk into a doctor's office and you hear something about personalized treatment for cancer, oncology, what does that mean to the person on the street?
Well, so, it's right now medicine tends to be a bit. Really, it's just kind of averaged over a lot of people. You're basically not really specifying a specific person. So let's see, how do I say this here? With personalized medicine, we have the option of taking someone's genome and looking at it and tailoring a medical treatment specifically for that person. Right now, when you go into a general doctor's office, you will get just a generalized treatment, and it's some of the treatments that you have, some of the drugs you have may help you, some of them may not help you, some of them may actually be harmful. And so to the average person on the street, what personalized medicine means is you can tailor a treatment specifically for that person.
Dr. Demeure, are we able to do this right now?
Yeah, I think we've, my background is as a surgeon, but we've been doing it for a while, and obviously our tools are improving, and we have access to more examples of what Darin was talking about. But we go back to, for 20 years, we've known, for example, one type of thyroid cancer is hereditary, and if you can pick up the mutated gene in that person that they know will develop thyroid cancer in early age, you can operate and remove the thyroid before they ever actually develop a cancer. It's a medullary thyroid cancer. But now, similar to what Darin's saying, if you have certain cancers, everybody gets treated the same for first line treatment. That doesn't work, you go to a second line treatment. And I think we're coming now where we have tools where you can actually type the tumor, and it may only be 5 or 6% of lung cancers have a particular mutation, but there's a drug that's very effective for those patients. Well, it doesn't work if you don't have that mutation, but it works very well for that small subset. So those things are now creeping into the clinic where we can type a particular tumor and then find out that, yeah, you'd be a good candidate for treatment for this drug.
To hear you talk, to use the thyroid cancer as an example, it sounds as though you're saying some of this could be actually used as preventive medicine.
Sure, yeah. Well, we know, for example, many women that have the BRCA mutation, which is a common, well-known mutation in terms of hereditary breast and ovarian cancer, but some women will elect to have prophylactic mastectomies and reconstruction to prevent, it's not 100% effective, but it prevents 98, 99% of breast cancers. Or as soon as they're finished having children, elect to have their ovaries removed, and again, to greatly reduce the risk of developing ovarian cancer. So it is used, and also used, for example, in certain kinds of colon cancers, hereditary colon cancer, that those patients either get earlier screening with colonoscopy or elect to have, colon surgery and things like that in order to prevent the formation of cancer. So those things have reached the clinic already. Yeah.
Generally, it seems, and either of you can respond to this, and Mr. Broome will get to you in just a minute about the economic impact. To the average person on the street, we hear an awful lot still about cancer, and it seems like cancer research is gung-ho, but still there's a lot of people suffering, dying of cancer. Why can't we do something more quickly for people who are suffering from cancer?
Well, we're certainly trying to do that, and we've certainly made some inroads so far, but cancer is a very, very complex disease. Where genomics has, sequencing and everything you might be hearing about in the news, where that's really being applied right now, if you look over the literature, it's really on diseases that have a single genomic cause. So you can nail it down to maybe one mutation or one gene fusion or some weird crossover event. But it's one specific cause, and cancer has, in some cases, many different causes, and in many cases it also depends upon your environment too. So, for instance, we were talking about BRCA earlier. About 15% of breast cancers have a BRCA mutation, but so that leaves a whole other set of genes that might be causing that, or combinations of genes that might be causing that. And in addition, of those, I'll just leave it at that for right now.
This BRCA or BRCA gene, the BRCA, can you describe to a layperson what that means and why it's so difficult to harness?
Well, for BRCA, it's a breast cancer gene, and its function in the human body is to repair DNA, and you can see that being important. Like for various environmental exposures that you get. You might have breaks in your DNA, and that can lead to mutations. So if you have a malfunctioning protein, it can't repair it, and your chances of getting some, something funny happening with your cell increases.
And then multiplies rapidly.
And yeah, and it multiplies not only rapidly, but once you start getting a population of cells that no longer behave normally, it can evolve into a whole, what we call a heterogeneous population, a mixture of different types of cells that are all growing, that have a different, a different basis for the disease. So one population of cells might still have that BRCA problem, but there might be another that has that plus a different set of genes. Another might have a different pathway, and so your cancer is really this mixture of a different type of cells.
And so either of you doctors, how can we use personalized medicine, a personalized course of care for something like breast cancer or pancreatic cancer that seems to be so incredibly hard to corral in the human body? How can we do that?
I mean, I think what personalized medicine, as we're talking about it today, is really the application of genomics to trying to pick therapy. And I think we as docs have used personalized medicine all along. I mean, we know if people are smokers are more likely to get certain cancers, and so I mean that's us taking a good history and physical and applying what we learned toward tailoring it to that particular patient's care. Like we might not, if somebody has terrible lung function, you may not do a chest surgery on them or something like that because they wouldn't recover, but if somebody has good lung function, you would. So you've tailored that all along. Where genomics has come in, has been able to give us insights, and I think in my own particular areas, I think there's a real, it's relatively easy to do large-scale studies on common diseases, like breast cancer is relatively common, so you'll see studies where 300 women get certain chemotherapy and compared to 300 women that get another chemotherapy to say that treatment A is better than treatment B. You can't do that with a tumor that might only occur in a handful of people every year. And so there's where I think genomics has a real application to give us insights on how we could treat those patients. And that's one of the diseases that I study is adrenal cortical cancer. Maybe, statistically 4 or 5 people a year in Arizona would get that disease. And then one of the applications then is to say, how can we leverage the genomics of that relatively rare disease into the background and knowledge of what we know. We know that certain aspects of that disease are similar to breast cancer, for example. So, well, if this drug works for breast cancer, has this mutation, maybe we can leverage that knowledge and use that drug to treat a patient with adrenal cancer, for example. So that's one answer to your question of how we might use it in the clinic. The other is to sort of predict course of the disease. Whether it's not every pancreas cancer is the same, not every breast cancer is the same. We know that certain mutations might predict a more aggressive behavior, and I think those become important, in terms of being able to, number one, counsel the patient, 2, select therapy, things like that.
I want to follow up on what you said there because we keep naming the 2 most popular quote-unquote cancers that we hear a lot about is breast and pancreas. Are we using? Can personalized medicine in any way head off this pancreatic cancer outbreak that seems to have no cure now? Can you use a personalized course for an individual patient and then apply it to somebody across the hall, for instance?
Well, I think we learn from every patient. That's one of the challenges of genomics that we have yet is to take what we learn from the genomic analysis, pick a treatment, and then have that information, the results of that treatment map back to the gene mutation, back to the patient so that we can learn how that might benefit other patients. That's where we are right now, is trying to learn that. We don't have that information. We hear a lot about pancreas cancer because it's very devastating disease. Its incidence is on the rise. Certainly popular celebrities and things have had it recently.
Why?
That we don't know. We know that it's related to smoking. We know that unlike breast cancer, for example, the death rate is going down because we have early screening and we have more effective chemotherapies, so we're getting better at treating that. Colon cancer with screening, we're doing better with that because we have good screening and we can pick it up early and prevent a lot of cases by removing polyps with the scope. But pancreas cancer, we don't have a good screening test. Most of the time it's still detected relatively late. But even with pancreas cancer, we've made progress with personalized therapy. One of the things that came out of TGen in our group is identification of a gene called SPARK that when it's elevated predicts response to a drug that is now used, and we're seeing people live longer with pancreas cancer than ever did before. So we're not curing people, but we're doubling in some cases or even more, lengthening their lifespan with some of this treatment based on identification of a gene that was upregulated, that we had a drug that could target. And so we're making some progress. I don't want to be nihilistic about pancreas cancer. We're making progress there too.
Do you feel ever when obviously you gentlemen have to look at people in the eye with this, and do you ever feel like we're never going to get there? Or do you feel like there is an end to this? We will find something using personalized medicine?
I'm old enough to remember Richard Nixon declaring war on cancer, so that was a long time ago. So we've made a lot of progress. I think we're going to make a lot of progress against specific cancers. Cancer cell is a lot more complicated than like the AIDS virus. And I remember not too long ago, AIDS was a death sentence, and now we have people routinely living with it, not dying of it. I think that's where we're going to get to eventually with cancer. But cancer is a lot more complex than a relatively simple virus. So I think, I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime, but we're going to see progress against a lot more cancers, and the pace of progress will be a lot more rapid because of the technologies and smart guys like Darin figuring it out.
Yeah, the potential for biology to astound me is it's really humbling. I mean, you're talking about, with cancer, you're talking about something that's evolving to try and stay alive inside your body, and we may get a point where, as you're saying, we will be able to maintain wellness and health, but biology will always throw you a curveball.
A few years back, TGen, the Translational Genomics Institute, made a huge splash when it landed in Phoenix, and as a journalist, I feel like, and we're somewhat responsible for this too, but it's really very much under the radar, I feel, in terms of news coverage, and maybe you guys like it that way. I don't know, you can kind of work under the radar and do your thing. I mean, we get the press releases, but it's not really covered probably as aggressively as, say, East Coast medical institutions would be, but boy, it made a huge splash when it landed here. Barry Broome, what does it mean economically for economic development to have this institution in our town?
Well, I think it's really, science is kind of tricky from an economic standpoint because commercially it has so much failure. And so when people make lots of economic promises connected to science, I'm always concerned about that. And I think one of the things that I like to do, whether people are talking about education or talking about science, is remind people, the reasons behind those things are much greater than job creation. They're, societal, moral responsibilities. I think TGen did a couple of things. First off, TGen, contributed to the reputation of the market. One of the challenges when you build a market is you live off your reputation. And our reputation has, is depending on where you're at in the country and what industry sector, our reputation's a bit mixed, quite honestly. It's a great reputation in real estate and capital and housing and tourism. But when you talk about science and knowledge, we don't usually get much of an edge from a reputation standpoint. So TGen's contribution to the reputation of the market, I think, was really important. I prefer TGen's profile being low because when we cling to every grant achievement that comes out of TGen, we can catch ourselves overstating what it's doing scientifically. And that's really, I always talk about the Barrow Neurological Institute. And I always say, I know Barrow Neurological Institute is the most successful science asset in the Valley. And people say, how do you know that? I said, they won't talk to me. That's how I can tell. They're directly proportionate to how much they will talk to the economic development community. So,
why is that? I don't
well,
know.
because they're so serious about their science. They, a lot of really profound scientists feel compromised when people talk about commercial viability. So that's been the big battle in universities across the United States. People talk about Johns Hopkins and Baltimore, which is, the most scientifically compelling institution in the country for producing knowledge, the least compelling institution in the United States for commercial viability. Cannot even create a functioning tech transfer office and has no ability whatsoever to create a relationship with a venture fund. But at the core of them is this, I call, public purpose versus, private viability. And so these traditional institutions are deep in public purpose. So Barrow's been around a long time, probably deeply committed to public purpose, and the idea that we could leverage that into a relationship with Merck or Pfizer for a lot of core scientists is completely offensive, and some will even tell you it's unethical. So you're constantly making the world class. So the transition that has been made since the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980, which was the most important federal policy in commercializing science, is to get people scientifically to get their minds wrapped around the idea that if you're producing great science, its viability really is based upon how much it gets distributed to people. And if you want to distribute science, in a broad-based way to people, you have to push it through the healthcare delivery system. If you're going to push it through the healthcare delivery system, it's going to have some type of sustainable economic characteristic.
Dr. Demeure wanted to add something, but in that vein, it isn't just medicine that's undercovered here. It's anthropology at ASU, it's astronomy at the U of A. It's covered in scientific publications, but generally not by the mainstream media. Does that hurt us, do you think, in the eyes of the country, Barry?
Well, I think, you talk about astronomy, you're talking about the NASA project at the University of Arizona?
That and the Demeure project and the Mars project and
they got an $800 million grant, and I think they got a couple of paragraphs. So $800 million is still a lot of money. So I do think we I think what happens in Arizona is a place that innovators get mixed results. And this has to change in the next 3 to 5 years. We have innovators come into the market. I mean, take TGen. TGen splits its time between Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the Van Andel Institute. Dr. Trent does. Why is Dr. Trent splitting his time? Well, the Van Andel Institute's endowed. So the Van Andel Institute observes the scientific achievements of TGen and says, what's your biggest problem? And they say, well, it's money. And they go, gosh, we got lots of that. Our biggest problem is this traditional academic research group that was born out of the Van Andel Institute. They want to sit around and do white papers, and we'd like to see oncology leveraged at the Van Andel Institute. So someone like Dr. Trent becomes very compelling to an institution like that. And we're lucky we didn't lose him lock, stock, and barrel to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, the challenge around here is, you have to feed your innovators. And when you feed your innovators, you have to feed them for the purpose of what the innovation is. And then you have to consider the commercial success of the innovator, part of your return. But the best thing TGen did, in my opinion, was it changed how the healthcare people in the Valley work together. That is absolutely, in my opinion, unequivocally, the greatest achievement of TGen. Not what's coming out of TGen, but if you look at Banner and MD Anderson, you look at St. Joe's collaboration, you look at some of the things that have happened throughout Catholic West, Vanguard, Scottsdale Health. I mean, TGen's fingerprints are all over the interface between our hospitals, our healthcare network, and innovation. And I think that's the greatest achievement that TGen has contributed to our community. And that's why, when people ask me, well, how many jobs do we have connected to TGen? It's like, we only gave them a relatively small amount of money to get started. It's amazing TGen even sustained itself. And what it did is it changed the culture in the community. So the University of Arizona's medical campus and the pharmacy school and the health sciences and now the cancer center, all of that has followed the TGen announcement into that site. And if you want to ask the city of Phoenix how they feel about making that investment versus maybe building a sports arena, they will tell you they feel like they made the right investment. And so now you have this ASU campus coming down, and now you're going to see this Mayo investment with ASU that's going to be substantial. And you're going to see MD Anderson in the East Valley and cancer treatment centers in the West Valley. But they're all virtually connected, through the behaviors that TGen started to create, back in 2002. And so they changed healthcare behaviors, they changed attitudes among public policymakers, and they got people to be motivated and to think differently about the economy. But it's not add water and watch this explosive achievement. The great scientific and innovative markets in the country are people that are dedicated to science. And one of the goals that we have at GPEC in the next 2 or 3 years is to really reconnect the idea in this market. We've kind of run out of gas a little bit too on TGen because we've had this massive structural deficit as a state, federal government, most science publicly invested. So you had a contraction in the commitment to these science assets, just as a matter of fiscal outcomes of having the economy decouple. And one of our goals as the economy recovers is to reconnect people to this notion that this is a community that must become world-class in science if we're going to achieve our potential as a community. And that science includes healthcare sciences, but also things like alternative energy and clean tech. So I think TGen created this, I think you could build a case that MD Anderson and Banner is a byproduct of TGen. Certainly Cancer Treatment Centers of America in the West Valley is a byproduct of TGen. I mean, these are, when Cancer Treatment Centers of America was evaluating the market, and we were telling them the scientific capabilities of the market and what we could do for them, you know, they contacted Jeff Trent and had a conversation with Jeff Trent. Having Jeff Trent validate what we said encouraged it. One of the other things that's also very important is Dr. Patrick Soon-Schwang, who's the former founder of Abraxas, who is one of the most accomplished personalized medicine leaders in the world, brought Celgene into this market. This was a project that GPEC did. And since you're going to talk a lot about science, I'll do this in 2 minutes because I think I'm going to answer a question every 45 minutes.
Just a few seconds, man. I'll get you Dr. Demeure.
But when they came in and looked at this market, they were going to do a vaccine assembly plant in Phoenix, $14 an hour job. We had sent a communication to the founder of the company that said, you know, great, you know, we'll take any economic opportunity. Yeah, we'd like you, before you make the decision, come visit us and see what we're doing scientifically. It was Jeff Trent that helped us bring Patrick Soon-Schwang into the community. He went from $14 an hour jobs to 200 bioengineering jobs and put almost $250 million into that facility, doing maybe the most compelling vaccine engineering activity in the world in Phoenix instead of $14 an hour jobs. Subsequently has made investments in TGen technology and is now working on this, you know, we can't figure out what it is yet, he can't either, but this, you know, massive communication system in downtown Phoenix that's going to connect higher education, science and technology to telemedicine and record keepings, and all that started with TGen.
Dr. Demeure, you had something to add?
Well, I think to sort of build on why don't we hear more, you know, there's a natural dichotomy, and it was actually a pretty good book on this subject too, called Science, Business, Business, Science, out of the Harvard Press a few years ago, 3-4 years ago. And traditional academic medicine, if you will, or science is done in the lab, and the goal is to publish your results as soon as you get it out. You know, industry has a different model in a sense, and to basically patent and protect your industrial secrets until you get out patent and get a market, you know, get into the market there. So there's really a different culture in the way things operate a little bit. And so, I mean, I think TGen works a little bit on the boundary of that, but we don't hear, you know, we don't hear a lot about it because it gets published in the scientific press. It's not perhaps as important to some people as, you know, if, you know, the star quarterback sprains his toe or something, you know, but, you know, again, it's important for the community, and I see that. But I was going to add that TGen has had one other thing that we're impressed with that I really, we have like a scholars program with Helios Foundation things. We see young people and getting stimulated into science, and every summer, you know, we have a group of students that come. They're either high school, college students usually, and spend, you know, a couple months in the lab and do a project and then present things at a poster seminar and something. This is incredible. There's a great talent here, and I think the other thing that's helped is we've given some energy to really stimulate and foster that. And that's one of the things we enjoy the most, I think, for us is the docs and the scientists is having young people in the lab. We have master's student in our lab now from Midwestern University. We've got an ASU grad student. I mean, things like that too. And so the interactions with the other universities, and our student in the lab now has got a presentation at the big conference coming up later this month in Chicago, the premier cancer meeting, you know, for research every year.
The other thing about science
it's great.
That's really important is when you see 1,000 people doing research, they're basically working on what 8 or 10 people are doing. That's a fact. That's one of the first things you learn in economic development. You usually learn it the hard way. But if you look at a major science institution, it's being held together intellectually by a small handful of people, even if it's 2,000 people. And so one of the things that TGen did that was really important was bring Dr. Von Hoff to the community. And, you know, one of the reasons people like to promote science and promote science assets is, you know, there's so many incredibly credentialed people in the field. You can quickly catch yourself making overstated comments about them, and that's the worst thing you can do in the science community. But I think it's fair to say that Dr. Von Hoff is probably considered certainly one of the top 5, if not one of the top 10 cancer researchers in the United States. And it's not hard to figure out when you see that then Dr. Lee Hartwell leaves the Hutchinson Institute, where he's a Nobel Prize winner, and comes into the community because he saves Dan Von Hoff. And then Dr. Anna Barker comes from Washington, D.C., who's really many people credit with the achievement of the Human Genome Project at the National Cancer Institute. She's in this community now. And then Dr. Dave Alberts, who's considered a really elite oncology researcher at the University of Arizona. So now all of a sudden you bring one person in, now you have two, now you have three, now you have four, now you have five. And those 5 people are perfectly capable of generating enough intellectual value to create 2,000 scientific jobs in the community. And you can't create that without that kind of intellectual firepower. So it really is it's a home run hitter's game. And it's about the absolute best people in the world and bringing them, to the community. And then those absolutely best people in the world will generate your reputation in the marketplace, and others will follow.
Alzheimer's research has been a fairly significant area of research at TGen. And I don't remember, I apologize, is it Dr. Von Hoff who's doing the research on Alzheimer's, or is it Parkinson's?
He's a cancer surgeon, or cancer. Medical oncologist.
I know I read there's been a significant amount of work done on Alzheimer's. A year or so ago we had someone on our station. What's happening in that field in terms of personalized medicine, applying that towards Alzheimer's research? Either one of you.
I'm
really outside, outside my area, but
the group in TGen that's doing that is the neurogenomics group, and I need to download with them and get some more information about that, how they're translating it.
Right. So there is personalized medicine happening at the Alzheimer's level as well, and all across the board. If you had to pick the top 3 areas where you think that TGen, or any other physician for that matter, could apply personalized medicine in the next 10 years and have the most direct impact, what would those 3 areas be?
Well, I think one of them would definitely be prevention. So we're learning. We actually spoke before this about SNPs and everything. We're trying to figure out variants that increase your risk of having a certain disease. And so it doesn't tell you if you're actually going to get the disease, but it will tell you your chances of getting it in the future based upon your genes, your genome, and everyone else in the United States. So what you can do there is you can modify your risk by modifying your environment with your prior knowledge about your genome.
So predictive? Could we call it predictive medicine?
Predictive.
That's one. What do you think the other top 2 are, Dr. Demeure?
Well, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about cancer. So I think this is obviously treating cancer once you get it. And I think go back to the prevention, sort of we're learning more and more about things like heart disease and lipid profiles. Some people have high cholesterols and never have a heart attack and they're doing fine, and other people have normal cholesterols and have heart attacks. So I mean, as we understand those things a lot better, we'll be able to tailor therapy and predict therapy for those people better. I think we'll see some things in the area of infectious diseases, and as well, we'll see. We've already, I think TGen has a big focus in some of those things as well, particularly TGen Flagstaff. But I think there's another area where there's a lot of progress to be made. The bacteria are constantly changing, staying ahead of the antibiotics and all that. But I do think that's another area where else we'll see the genomics become very
what sort of interface
powerful.
Is there, do you think, between insurance companies and cutting-edge medicine? Will they ever see eye to eye?
I do think so. I think the onus is on us to show them how it becomes cost effective to get the right first treatment, based on better understanding. And when we do that for antibiotics right now, I just mentioned that, where we do a culture and then you pick the antibiotic for the patient based on the sensitivity of the bacteria in the lab. And so instead of picking the most expensive drug that may hit everything, you can get a targeted drug that's less expensive that might be more effective to treat that person's pneumonia or whatever. And I think, so that's sort of the simple paradigm, but you can carry that over to cancer and other diseases. So if we say that this person has a cancer, that maybe this drug's a bit more expensive, but it's going to work better, and in the long run, that's going to save money.
So maybe if we could
something effective.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that having an effective first treatment, rather than, say you take a chemotherapy that works for 30% of people or 40% of people, but you don't know which ones. So, it's a coin flip, and you're going to put somebody through an expensive, toxic regimen to something that doesn't work, and then go on to second-line therapy and maybe repeat that process. That's very expensive to fail, in terms of the therapy. So if we could be smarter and pick something that works the first time and is effective and gets a response, that's going to save money to insurance companies in the long run.
Do you think perhaps personalized or predictive or the types of things we've been talking about could be defined by insurance companies as experimental instead of predictive or maybe preventive, and that's where we have some of the problem? You could suggest if you could prove it straight out of the box, you're more likely to have success with the insurance companies, but do you think that it's deemed experimental?
Well, they'll say it's unproven. I mean, and that's a statistical question. Cigarette companies will still say it's unproven that cigarettes cause cancer. So statistically, you can't prove something if you ask a statistician. So I do think I think it was Blue Cross Blue Shield funded the study on bone marrow transplants for breast cancer, advanced breast cancer. I think one of the rationales that we're getting tired of being sued by patients to get that therapy, and so they funded a trial. So I think you'll see people coming together and the insurance companies coming together, saying, well, we have to find rational places for this, and I think we'll actually see them funding some more studies, and especially there'll be a resource as the electronic records, and there's less payers for the same things. Powerful population studies, base studies have been done out of countries with nationalized health systems because they have the records, things like that. So I think we'll see some of that coming, working together more.
We're about halfway through tonight's program. We'll wrap up at about 8:30, but I'd like to give us an opportunity to take a 10-minute break or so. If you need the restrooms, they are through these doors to my right, and if you'd like to get a snack or a cup of coffee, a glass of lemonade or water, right out the back doors. Please try to be back in your seats in 15 minutes tops. So let's shoot for 10. We good? Thank you very much. See you in 10 minutes.
She grew up so fast, but I know she'll do well here. She'll get the foundation she needs and deserves. I did. The Maricopa Community Colleges are the strength of this community. I'm proud she'll be part of them.
Discover yourself. The Maricopa Community Colleges. Locations throughout the valley. maricopa.edu.
Welcome back to our discussion on personalized medicine. This is a town hall partnership between Rio Salado College, the Maricopa Community College District, KJZZ, the Arizona SciTech Festival, and MCTV, and of course you. I'm going to veer slightly from the program for just a few seconds because I have a personal question I want to ask here that I think is fascinating, because I just happened to read this last night. It happens to be true. The gentlemen on the panel, and all of them are uniquely qualified to answer this question. I read last night that in the not too distant future, within just a few years, which is really light speed in terms of science, I will be able to have my genome sequenced for the cost of an average blood test. Is this true, and what does that mean for me?
It's very true. When the Human Genome Project first started, the cost was thought to be about $3 billion, and I think it ended up being maybe around $1.5 billion. But what's happened is that price has plummeted over time, probably more than just about anything else in history. The price has plummeted. So, probably a few years ago, it was maybe in 2008, it was about $1 million to get your genome sequenced. Last year it was about $10,000. This year, right now, it's probably between $2,000 and $3,000. There's some places that might get it. You might get it sequenced for about $1,000. And so, at that rate and the way the technology is going, it probably will be in the low hundreds of dollars very shortly.
And I would assume that I would have that done so that you, Dr. Demeure, or any of you could look at my genome and say, here's the problem, we attack it with this particular type of medicine or this treatment. Is that why I would have this done?
Well, I mean, there's lots of limitations, so unfortunately. You can get the genome, they'll give it to you on a big terabyte computer disk, and you go, okay, what do I do with it? The limitation now is the informatics, being able to understand and interpret the data and all that. Still at this date, you get that disc, there's issues about the quality of the data or the need for validation. You find a mutation on genome sequencing, you have to validate it. There's still a lot of false positives depending on the technologies. In other words, a mutation that shows up that really isn't there when you go to try to prove it. Today there was an article in the paper about cancers. We biopsy the cancer, do the genome, find a treatment. This is an article in the Phoenix paper about an article that was in the New England Journal, and we've known this for a while. And the team at TGen, head by Mike Barrett in particular, has been looking at tumor heterogeneity, saying different areas of the tumors have different mutations, or the metastases may have a different genomic profile than the primary tumor. So it's not as simple as just sending off a bit of your tumor or your blood to get a genome and then interpreting it.
But we are uniquely positioned, Barry Broome, in this market to do something with this.
We are, and one of the things that is really important when you're building a market strategy is that you stay on your competencies. And when you hear about supercomputing capabilities, that's a competency that was built here in Arizona around the aerospace and defense industry. So GE here in the market brought their supercomputing capabilities to Arizona State University at the encouragement of Motorola during around 1956. And so this kind of high-speed math and computational science capabilities that it takes for you to interpret this genome. The reason we attracted Dr. Anna Barker here is she's convinced that we have the best talent in the United States in that space. And that's really exciting because as we talked about earlier, how important it is for our community to get a reputation for talent. So taking these supercomputing capabilities that have been built through our defense position, and then understanding, through this cloud technology and IBM, how to build on that system in a way to where it's very useful. So TGen, for instance, is involved in a number of scientific studies and interfaces in predictive medicine with the Phoenix Children's Hospital. And I talked to the president of Phoenix Children's Hospital, which is an amazing achievement in our community. 7 or 8 years ago, it was literally in swing space, and now it's one of the top 10 children's hospitals in the United States of America. And Bob Meyer deserves credit for that. But he's now telling us that through their work with TGen and this computational science, that they're getting children and patients where they have an 80, 90% chance of fatality, and finding pathways to treatments that are literally saving these children's lives. And it's very exciting to hear about this. And this is not only TGen and not only Phoenix Children, but it's supercomputing capabilities that are in our universities that are allowing for this aggressive analysis, so that as they're saying, the genome created almost as many questions as it did answers. And so the ability to make these little maps, genome chips for each one of us, but have the ability to be able to evaluate the tens of thousands of different paths that they will send our physicians on is just as important as our ability to capture that DNA. And the supercomputing capabilities here in our community, connected to our science community, is allowing a high-speed maneuver through those so we can get to treatments in a more efficient and effective way. And then from our defense and aerospace position and our 3 universities historically, we are producing some of the best math and science computational talent in the United States in that space.
Very good, thank you. You've heard the discussion now between me and the panelists. It's your opportunity to guide the discussion. Time for you to ask your questions. We've got various staff members around the room with microphones. If I do call on you to ask a question, please be concise with your question, 10 seconds if possible. Please identify yourself, what organization you're with, speak clearly, and our representatives will hold the mic because they know where to put it and you won't have to worry about it. Questions from the audience? This gentleman.
Hi, my name is Aaron. I'm actually a student studying mathematics at Arizona State, and I'm actually interested in some of the ways that computer science can help answer these questions dealing with large amounts of data. So I had a question for Dr. Taverna, since you are a bioinformatician, as I understand. What are sort of some of the challenges in maybe the current programming frameworks that you might use to sort of address this large set of data that is the human genome, and how do you make sense from a computing perspective?
Well, it's crazy because with the drop in cost in sequencing, we've had this compensating increase of information, and so it seems that the amount of computing power we need is rising just as fast as the information we're producing, and a lot of software out there can't handle it. So when I first started out with this, Excel could handle it. Not anymore, not even close. The most lines Excel can handle is 1 million. You were talking about 3 billion, and that's just looking at one patient, right? So I do a lot of, I call it hacking, I do a lot of, for people that do computation, I use a lot of Perl and C, to work my way in these files. But we do have a problem because visualization is a key. Scientists love to visualize something, and unless you're like constantly hooked into the matrix, you're not going to be able to visualize this stuff and see where a variant is, or as we were talking about before, gene fusion events. Like when we're talking about this stuff on a disk, I'll use that analogy again. Actually, it's not an analogy; it's real. You just have a long string of letters, and those letters have to be interpreted. So if we know where a gene is and there's a single letter change, that doesn't tell us whether or not the protein that is made from that gene is actually going to malfunction, if it's going to be better or worse or cause a disease. That all has to be tested, and so every person has millions of these variants in them. The average person is walking around with 3 million variants. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done with visualization and just pushing this data across. Like we can't even really send this data over the internet to a collaborator if we wanted to. We have to encrypt it and send it on a big disk drive. It's like a terabyte of information for each patient.
I can't help but think we're going to look back in 50 years and go, wow, they were so rudimentary, and it's as fast as it's progressing, right? I mean, maybe even 10 years, maybe 5 years. How soon will we be able to make sense of these, thousands of phone books worth of stuff that is the genome, and hand it to me on a chip and say, here's what's wrong, here's what you do about it? Is that pie in the sky?
I think it's gonna happen over time. I mean, the tools for analysis are really just in their infancy, and I mean, a lot of the software is being written by guys at TGen and elsewhere, but that are allowing you to then go on the internet, upload your data, and eventually be able to come up with some tools and predict if a mutation, for example, is deleterious. Does it change the function of the protein? I mean, cancers basically were a lot, but mostly again we're talking cancer, but there's genes, mutations either usually turn the gene on, so it's like stepping on the gas on the car, so the cell grows faster, divides faster, or it cuts a brake line, or a control, or what we call a tumor suppressor gene, and if you can inactivate the brake, then the cell can continue to grow too fast and divide, and that's kind of in simple terms what cancer does. So we have to want to try to predict, does the mutation change function? And some of that's based on our analysis, but we have to understand structures of proteins, and some of the mutations are new, some are ones that are characterized and have been known already, but for the new ones, you have to try and predict, is it a significant change in the function, and how will that affect the cell? And it's not just, these things all happen in networks, not even just linear pathways, but the proteins exist in networks. So if you affect one protein in a network, how does that affect everything else? We know, for example, we can take a cancer drug that's very effective at turning off a certain gene, but the cell's pretty smart. It may develop a bypass around that so that the tumor then escapes and grows anyway. So there's a lot that we don't know.
Other questions from the audience? This gentleman right there. Are we next over here?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, hello, my name is Mohammed Gaballa. I am the director of the Cardiovascular Center Research Center at Banner Sun Hills Research Institute. I have a couple comments. One of them is the Valley have more than TGen and Barrows. In the West Valley, we have the Sun Hills Research Institute and Barron Alzheimer's Disease Institute, and we do a lot of work with Alzheimer. In my lab, we do a lot of work with cardiovascular work. And I really have an issue with this personalized medicine issue because it seems to me it's taken away from the focus of the most significant problems, such as heart failure, Alzheimer's disease, most chronic diseases, even cancer, is a multi-gene disease, and it's also more of the environmental factors. So the way the panel phrased that, it is good for single gene disease, which is only a handful of those that you can actually use the genome to do that. In addition to the fact that most chronic diseases have a problem with multiple genes, they also have a major issue with epigenetics, which another pie in the sky that I don't see in the near future that we're going to even have a handle over it. So, I mean, we do some real hardcore personalized medicine where we do stem cells, where we get cells from the patient on tissue, process it, and give it back to the patient. I mean, for me, that is personalized medicine. The idea of using the genome and the epigenome to target specific things, in my mind, is going to take years, if not even centuries. I understand in things like adrenal cancer, where you have a specific disease, yes. But there's only a handful of those. I mean, the panel mentioned there's only 4 to 5 people in this whole state that have that disease. Just a comment. Thank you.
Responses quickly?
Briefly, I mean, certainly we talk about this, but I mean, there's a lot of everything. You know, we talk about a particular mutation or something in cancer and curing, but I mean, we can prevent a lot of cancers by lifestyle modifications, probably more so by, you know, in heart disease and everything else you say, avoiding smoking, doing the various things, your diet. And so I don't argue that there's a lot of things we already know that we're not doing that we could do to improve our life and our quality of life and our lifespan and everything. We have a collaboration with Sun Health and stuff like that, just so you know. I don't mean to exclude anyone, we're just talking about what we do. So that's the other comment.
Here?
I'm a student at Mesa Community College. My name is Michelle. I have a question about epigenetics. Do you guys incorporate that in personalized medicine?
I'd say one of the reasons we study genomics, I think, is because we have the tools. You know, the chips, once we had the RNA chips that came out, or the expression chips, that was a rage because we had a tool and then we had data and then we could analyze it and try to learn something. And then, then obviously whole genome sequencing. So that's it. The proteomics and the epigenetics is the technology is much less advanced, if you will, or our ability to do it, I think, or even understand it is nowhere near, is nowhere near, I would think it's a fair comment where we are. So, so yeah, when we know that epigenetics are, ways of turning genes on and off, things like that, that are important, we're starting to look at it, I know, in our lab, in our tumors. But
Dr. Demeure, epigenetics is the practice of turning a gene on and off?
Well, you can make modifications to the DNA, like adding a methyl group on or something that will silence a gene, for example, or prevent the turning on of a gene, the production of a gene product, basically. So it's it's another regulatory mechanism. And so again, we know that those are affected in cancer and other diseases.
Yeah, I was definitely going to try and define that for the rest of the audience. But yeah, there are some studies, I guess in your lab, but there are some studies that other folks are doing at TGen with epigenetics like methylation. So we had a study from the Carpton lab recently that was showing if hyper or hypomethylation, different changes of methylation affected multiple myeloma.
Other audience questions? Mr. Sarr?
My name is Dana Sarr. I'm a member of the governing board at community colleges. And I'm going to discuss the law of unintended consequences. When you're looking at the kind of detail you're looking at on an individual, and you're a parent who's got a child that's newborn, do you find yourself looking down the road at the possibility of being able to change that child so they don't have the possibility of certain diseases? But on the other hand, you're really getting into some societal issues as to how much of that we really want to do.
Or no.
There was an article or an editorial in the New England Journal, perhaps a month or 6 weeks ago, I don't know exactly when, but talked about some of these things. For example, you donate your tumor to because you donate your tumor because you have cancer and you study it, but then the researcher notes a hereditary gene that may predict your children get a certain disease. Our rules for research and what we call the institutional review boards that govern ethical research, right now the consent may not have been written that we can actually tell you that. Or if you had the opportunity to know, would you want to know? If you had something that said your child would get cancer at a certain age or die early, or or something like that, would you want to know how if something could be done, or what if nothing could be done? So I mean, these things are things that society hasn't worked out yet. I mean, I think you're getting to a point where you're talking about changing genes, things like that. That's even far off. But I mean, we hear things about selection of children by their gender, well, I want a boy or a girl, and things like that. So there's a lot of ethical questions we're not expert on, but
cutting edge in a number of fronts. Dr. Glasper.
Yes, Rufus Glasper, the Chancellor of the Maricopa Colleges. First, I'd like to thank TGen for being a partner with the Maricopa Colleges. We're one of the founding supporters, and we have had our faculty and students as interns over at TGen. My question to you is there a nexus between personalized medicine and naturopathic medicine?
Stumped. You stumped the panel.
I'm afraid I don't know enough about naturopathic medicine to answer that.
Well, I'm just wondering, there are a number of MDs now around the valley that are starting to incorporate naturopathic medicine as part of their treatment with traditional medicine support. And they're looking, a number of individuals are also adding to their MD degree an ND in terms of the naturopathic. And I'm just wondering, as you look into personalized medicine and you start looking at individual behavior, and you talked about the notion of using average application support for an individual. I'm just wondering with the notion, and my biggest concern is going in and now and say that I have high blood pressure, so we'll use this because it helped Dana. And we're starting to ask different questions, and I'm just wondering, has there ever been any questions?
There's an emerging field of medicine, if you will. I think the term is called integrative medicine, which I think encompasses maybe what you're asking in terms of saying, well, we've got traditional medicine, but where does behavioral modification, nutrition, natural medicine, if you will, or things like that, or even Far Eastern medicines and things like that, where can we take the best from whatever field of knowledge and integrate that in? I mean, people use acupuncture or something like that to maybe have, control pain from surgery and different things like that, or nausea from chemotherapy, but starting to integrate different sort of disciplines of medicine toward a better outcome. I mean, I think we in traditional sort of Western medicine, if you will, are looking more and more at that and how to bring that in, and there's been studies to show you get better results.
Other questions? Over here.
Hi, I'm Jillian Kong-Seibert. I'm a mom in the community here in support of a girl scientist. I just finished reading The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and I'm fascinated by this idea that there are some tumors that are sort of superstar tumors that behave really differently, wildly differently maybe than others, and are more prone, better subject matter. Do you get those anymore? I mean, does that happen?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by superstar tumors.
Well, I mean, it's my understanding that the thing that was extraordinary about this tumor was that it grew particularly well and could be experimented on kind of.
Yeah. Well, we have, routinely where we get patients that I might do surgery on will donate their tumors to the lab, and we're able to get them in culture now. I mean, back then that was a fairly unique phenomena to be able to do that, and it's been an incredible cell line to do research on and still is used today. But now we actually, my adrenal cancer lab, if I operate on a patient with adrenal cancer, we actually grow the cells, try to grow the cells of culture. We've been successful doing that. And then one of the things I mentioned about whole genome studies is to validate the results. So based on the whole genome analysis of that tumor, we say, well, this drug may be good for treating this tumor. We then have the cells growing in culture, and we can see if the drug is toxic to those cells. And that's kind of the paradigm we're trying to follow. So the cell culture and actually patients donating their tissues for science when they're having the research. I mentioned the thing with Sun Health. We've had patients donate their bodies to science with cancer after they die, and then they do an autopsy rapidly and get the tumors frozen in the lab so we can preserve the genomic material and do that for analysis. We've done that with some patients with adrenal cancer, pancreas cancer. And it's a great gift and a powerful tool for researchers.
A follow-up: Are we on a razor's edge at all between what you could define as personalized medicine and designer medicine? And by that I mean genetic manipulation. This goes back a little bit to what Mr. Sarr was asking. When you look down the road and you start to figure out, can we manipulate the genome? Can we do things other than cure people? Where's the razor's edge with that, and are we near it?
I don't think we're near that yet. We've had some gene therapy trials before, some that worked, some that unfortunately didn't. I'm not talking about TGen. I'm talking about in society as a whole. I think for personalized medicine, we're really talking about not fixing a gene so much as trying to address it with the right combination of drugs, not tailoring a drug specifically to an individual, taking what's out there already and finding the right way to use it. So there's been some cases now at TGen where we've had a drug for breast cancer where it's been used for another disease because profiling of a tumor has made us think that that tumor will be susceptible to that drug. So that's more kind of what I think of, not about.
I mean, I can see you can do that. Say, for example, I talked about knocking out it. I mean, it's not that far away, but to mention you cut the brake line, so you knock out a gene that's a brake. That so if you could reinstill that, put that function back, you could treat the tumor. I mean, I think as a concept we're there. I mean, and that's not a wild concept. People are working on that and able to do that in the lab, haven't done it in tumors. I mean, I think nobody here or around, in our group, but cloning of animals and the mammals now, so it's not that far away to say the technology for cloning people might be there, but I mean, so nobody here is working on that and stuff, and it's illegal. And that's not to say it couldn't happen somewhere. Somebody might not try to do it, So there's certain, science can be abused certainly, not just in medicine,
Sure.
Nuclear, things and whatever, But.
Other audience questions? We've got about 5-6 minutes left. Time for a few more questions. Let's go there, and then let's get the young lady here in the purple shirt.
Okay. Hi, my name's Kyle Porter. I'm a journalism student at Cronkite School at ASU with an interest in science and medical writing. I wonder whether some of the work at TGen is concentrating or working with the genome of pathogens, human pathogens, or microbes that are natural to the human body as well as that process of looking at human health.
So. Up at TGen North in Flagstaff, we have a group of really talented investigators up there working on, not only bad pathogens, but the human biome as well. Things you might find in your gut. You have a huge population of both helpful and harmful bacteria, and it's all its own environment. And if you get an injury, sometimes it might get out of whack. But understanding these organisms is definitely a big focus of study up there. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Young lady, how old are you?
14.
Terrific. What's your name?
Mackenzie.
And your question?
How exactly do you change someone's DNA and make sure that the exact mutations that you want to happen?
You stumped the panel.
It's a good thing I volunteer at Bioscience High School, and I know you go there, so we'll talk about that after class.
We do this, I mean, we kind of do it in the lab. We take advantage of, you can make different things. You can introduce pieces of DNA by making little holes in the cell membrane, electrophoresis, for example, or chemically to get that, or you can actually use certain kind of viruses to introduce bacteria, segments of DNA into cells, and it doesn't always work. So then what you have to do is you have to selectively pick out the cell that did change the way you wanted it to, and then grow those up. And that's a short answer, I guess, of how you do that. But you take advantage of certain biological tools that you have.
Yes, sir, please.
Hi, I'm Barry Broome, and I have a PhD in the sciences, and I've been searching for a job for a while. What can be done? What would you suggest to make health science and science in general more rewarding so that motivated people like myself and these wonderful students here have a future?
Well, I don't know if there's one specific path to get here. Like I got here by enjoying both biology and physics, and then learning the math and the programming necessary to do this. But what drives me every day is the impact in health that we have. So find a core set of tools and start applying it to these real world problems. That's what I recommend for you. But we can talk afterwards if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Ben Gubernick. I'm with SciTech. I was just wondering, is there any market for tumors? Do researchers have to rely strictly on donations?
There are companies. there are companies that you can. But I don't know how they've amassed their tumor banks, if they will, and you can buy specimens commercially. There's a nonprofit organization that you can also go through that's government sponsored, to get tumor samples. A lot of it is a cottage industry where is driven on institutionals and the hospitals. So you go to a lot of the big hospitals. You mentioned Johns Hopkins or whatever. They have their own versions of tumor banking, and one of the things that is difficult then is the sharing, because people tend to hold on to the resources and things like that. So it's not always easy to even get others to, so it has certain of these tumors. Some of the tumors we've studied have come from a collaboration with the Mayo Clinic, but those collaborations are really built on colleague friends of mine said, well, yeah, I'll share some with you, not any kind of structural format. Arizona has, and Barry might speak to that more, put an effort together to get a bioresource banking mechanism going for the state. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, I mean, tissue collection is really important part. One of the largest brain banks in the world is sitting out at Sun Health. And, so, paying attention to and gathering the tissues so that the physicians can work on that are really important. And then I don't know how that works in tumors because I'm not familiar with it, but I know there's also the ability to develop immortalized cell lines, which I think is, it's a important way to produce and validate science as well. I don't know how successful that technique is in tumors, but I'd be very concerned if there was a tumor company out there. It'd make me a little nervous. But I think so. Here, we've paid a lot of attention to, and it goes back, why we have such breakthroughs with Alzheimer's. It's because we were a retirement community and people donated their brains after they passed away to Sun Health. Sun Health built a tremendous brain bank capabilities, and then Catholic West built Barrow Neurological Institute, and now because of people's longevity, it's chronic, so now it's an enormous unmet need. But a lot of the success that I've seen, I launched 31 life science companies, so I do know a little bit about this. I'm not a scientist, but a lot of what you do when you build on these large unmet needs is you try a way to simulate something like tumors, so that you can get to the exact same scientific conclusions without having a scarce commodity like tumors being necessary. But
good.
Then when you produce legitimate health indications from the research, you have to actually go into animals and produce, validation. Efficacy.
Barry, thank you. Thank you all very much. Gentlemen, Michael Demeure, Darin Taverna, and Barry Broome, TGen and Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it.